dramatic as this, but I think any human being in this room would have to admit that if the UFO phenomenon is occurring, as the report suggests, it's the most important event in human history. And if that's the case, I don't think any institution or organization is being very wise to oppose the investigation, the serious investigation of such a phenomenon. In order to discuss this intelligently, we must know that the data we're relying on is reliable. The data is solid. The data, of course, comes mainly from the reports of the people who've had these experiences, plus a whole range of attendant physical evidence, which I don't want to go into at this point. Now, what do we know about the UFO experience in terms of the reliability of what the aliens say? And I use the word aliens for want of a better term. The first thing is that the aliens are extraordinarily deceptive and operate in a covert manner. There is no doubt about that. There is no possible way that anyone who's looked into this phenomenon can say anything to the contrary of that, simply because we have a whole history of what we have to call screen memories, when the UFO occupants make us see things that are not there in order to hide the way they actually appear. The way the memory of the experience very, very often has been stolen from us, which is not only an act of theft, it's an act of deception, and it can't possibly really be defended so far as I'm concerned. Now, there are all kinds of wonderful stories to illustrate this sort of control that they can have over our perceptions. I was working with a woman once who was recalling an experience. She's on the table inside a ship. There's a physical examination taking place. It's extremely painful, demeaning, and so forth, and she is not only enraged and furious, but she's scared to death, and she's undergoing pain. And the head alien, as we know from these accounts, often happens, walks over, puts his hand across her forehead, and she said the pain disappeared. She felt waves of the most profound love she has ever felt in her life. She said she would sacrifice her own children for the love that she felt for this being. It was just beyond anything she had ever known. No pain, no anger, and total love. He walked away from her, took his hand away, of course. The pain came back. She began to get angry again. She was hurting again. She was furious again. And he came back and he put his hand on her head, and she would have again sacrificed her children for that love. Now, that kind of manipulation is, of course, something that's part and parcel with the alien means of operating. At any rate, this kind of deception goes on and on. People have been made to feel that they were themselves aliens in an early life, made to see themselves as if they have alien hands and so forth. All kinds of imagery seems to be played into people's heads. I know this totally sounds crazy. You have to read the background information supporting this. But I'm trying to start with what I assume many of you already know about the phenomenon. So the basic first point here is that we can't trust the data, that we can't trust what the aliens are saying to us under any conditions. As a second major fact, we know what happens to individuals who are reporting abduction experiences psychologically. We know that they are psychologically scarred. The only set of psychological tests which, so far as I know, were ever done on this matter were done, I was partly involved in this in 1981. Dr. Elizabeth Slater, a psychologist, tested a group of abductees, or people reporting these experiences. She was not told the nature of the sample she was testing, anything about their UFO experiences, but she found that all of them shared three deficits psychologically. All had low self-esteem, all had a certain dissociation in their attitude towards their bodies, their physicality, their sexuality, and all had a lot of trouble trusting people. Well, at any rate, she pointed out, when we later told her after she wrote a report, the nature of the sample that she had tested and what they had experienced, and she said, though this doesn't prove anything, if these people had had the experiences they reported, then these are precisely the kinds of deficits one would imagine would accrue. And she said it's very much like what happens when you get a rape victim. Now, the next thing is, are these experiences, and I'll try to be very brief, are these experiences transformational in any way? And of course they can be transformational in a wonderful way, provided they meet therapists and a support group and other people who are associates in this field who can lead them through their experiences in such a way that they understand that they're not crazy, that there's no blame to be ascribed to them, and so forth. The therapist, the support group, and friends and family provide the safety net that create that transformational experience. I don't think there's any doubt about it. We want these people to become much more whole. We want them to feel a sense of healing. It's an extremely delicate and difficult new kind of procedure of therapy that has to be developed really at this point. I'm not a therapist myself, unlike John, but I feel that what we do if we work with these people is a kind of de facto therapy.
Will you sum it up by describing the nature of the reality plane that you think
that
this is real in?
Very good. The nature of the plane is this. The UFO phenomenon runs a tremendous 180-degree gamut from being totally physical, nuts and bolts. When the thing comes down, it could break the tree branches down from the top, leave marks on the ground. People are floated out of buildings, are scarred, their bodies are marked. The craft can show up on radar, they can be photographed, etc. Totally physical. And on the other end, totally paranormal. All the communication is telepathic. The craft can be apparently unseeable at some points. We know that people can be floated through walls and they're actually missing. This is not an out-of-body experience, it's an out-of-the-house experience. The hardest thing for scientists to accept is the idea that it is both physical and so totally paranormal. The whole paradigm of what's possible, of course, has to be expanded.